A lot of people look financially fine on the outside, but quietly feel anxious every day. They go to work, pay their bills, handle responsibilities, and try to stay positive. But deep down, they constantly feel like money disappears faster than they can keep up with it. Over time, that feeling becomes emotionally exhausting because it starts feeling like no matter how hard you work, financial peace never fully arrives. That is the part nobody really prepares you for. Nobody talks enough about the emotional side of constantly feeling behind. There is the pressure of checking your account balance before buying something simple, the guilt that comes after emotional spending, and the frustration of earning more money, but somehow still feeling financially stressed. Most people think financial problems come from one huge mistake, but in reality, financial stress is usually built through small habits and emotional patterns repeated over time. And the dangerous part is that most of those habits feel completely normal while they are happening. Financial stability is often imagined as something that finally arrives once income increases enough. They imagine that once they reach a certain salary, life will immediately feel calmer and more secure. But many people eventually discover something surprising. The stress does not always disappear. Sometimes the income grows, but the habits stay the same. The emotional spending stays the same, the financial avoidance stays the same, and the pressure to constantly upgrade life stays the same. That is why this conversation matters, because financial habits are rarely just about numbers. They are usually connected to emotions, identity, stress, burnout, comfort, and survival. In many cases, spending habits are not driven by recklessness at all, but instead by exhaustion. After difficult days, people often spend money trying to make life feel easier, reward themselves emotionally, or create some sense of progress while carrying the pressure of adulthood. And slowly, those emotional decisions begin turning into financial patterns. The difficult part is that most of these habits feel normal while they are happening, and that is exactly what makes them dangerous. This video is not about becoming extremely frugal or pretending people should never enjoy life. It is about understanding the quiet patterns that slowly keep people financially stuck, and learning how small changes can completely shift the direction of a person's future over time. One of the easiest ways money disappears is through small habits that slowly become part of everyday life. At first, the spending usually feels harmless. It might be coffee before work, because the morning already feels stressful. Ordering food after getting home exhausted, because cooking feels like too much effort. Or buying small things online late at night, because the purchase creates a temporary feeling of comfort or reward. None of these decisions feel financially dangerous in the moment, and that is exactly why they become so powerful over time. Little by little, the spending becomes automatic. People stop thinking about it because the habits feel tied to normal routines. And eventually, many adults reach a point where they genuinely wonder where all their money keeps going. The difficult part is that many people are not spending this way because they are careless. A lot of the spending is emotional. People are often tired, overwhelmed, and mentally drained, so convenience starts feeling like relief when everyday life already feels heavy. That is why awareness matters so much. The goal is not perfection, and it is not guilt. The goal is simply paying attention long enough to notice the patterns that are shaping your financial life. Tracking spending feels emotionally uncomfortable for many individuals, which is why financial avoidance quietly becomes a habit. They worry it will make them feel restricted or ashamed. But awareness creates clarity, and clarity gives people the ability to finally change what has quietly been controlling them for years. One simple habit can begin shifting this immediately. For the next 7 days, write down every non-essential purchase you make, without judging yourself while you do it. The purpose is not to criticize every decision, but to notice the patterns clearly enough to understand what has been happening beneath the surface. Because once people clearly see where their money is going, they often begin understanding themselves differently too. Financial progress is often associated with dramatic changes or major breakthroughs. They think they need a huge raise, a perfect investment strategy, or some major breakthrough before life finally starts feeling stable. But most financial momentum actually begins much more quietly than that. It starts when someone finally pauses long enough to become honest about their habits. That is usually the turning point. Not because life suddenly becomes easy, but because awareness changes the way people make decisions. At first, the changes seem small, and that is why many people underestimate them. One person starts cooking at home more often instead of relying on convenience spending every night, while another finally checks their subscriptions and realizes how much money has quietly been leaving their account every month. Meanwhile, someone else begins recognizing how often shopping became emotional relief after stressful days. None of those decisions feel life-changing immediately. That is where many people lose patience, because in the beginning, financial progress feels emotionally invisible. The habits improve before the results do. A person might save a little money one month and still feel financially anxious. They might become more disciplined while still feeling behind. They might make smarter decisions, but still look around and feel like everyone else is somehow moving faster. That creates emotional tension because people naturally want visible proof that their effort is working. But real financial change usually happens quietly at first. Long before someone looks financially stable on the outside, they often begin feeling more emotionally grounded internally. They stop panicking every time they check their account, stop avoiding financial conversations, and stop feeling emotionally controlled by every unexpected expense. And eventually, another realization begins happening. Small decisions repeated consistently start changing the emotional relationship people have with money. The anxiety becomes slightly quieter, the guilt becomes less intense, and the constant feeling of financial chaos slowly begins calming down. That emotional shift matters more than many people realize, because when someone spends years feeling financially overwhelmed, even small moments of peace start feeling significant. Being able to pay a bill without stress, going a week without emotional spending, and finally understanding where money actually went that month can feel deeply emotional after years of financial overwhelm. Those moments seem small from the outside, but emotionally they can feel life-changing. And over time, those small habits create momentum, not overnight wealth or instant success, but momentum. That emotional shift matters because financial stability is not only about numbers. It is also about finally feeling like your life is moving in a healthier direction. And for many adults, that feeling of direction creates relief they have not felt in years. One of the biggest mindset changes people experience financially happens when they stop seeing money as only a math problem. Because for many adults, money is deeply emotional. It affects confidence, identity, stress levels, relationships, and even self-worth. That is why financial habits can feel so difficult to change. A person might know they should save more money, stop emotional spending, or create a budget, but emotionally they are still trying to cope with stress, exhaustion, burnout, or the pressure of adulthood. That creates internal conflict. People feel frustrated with themselves because logically they understand what they should do, but emotionally they still feel pulled toward comfort and relief. Eventually, however, many people reach an important realization. Financial peace is not created by becoming perfect, but by becoming more intentional with everyday decisions. That realization changes the way people view themselves. Instead of constantly feeling ashamed or behind, they begin understanding that financial habits are often connected to emotional patterns that were never properly addressed. And once people stop approaching money with constant shame, change becomes easier. Because shame usually creates avoidance, while clarity creates action. That emotional shift is powerful. People begin making calmer decisions. They stop trying to impress everyone around them. They stop using spending as proof that they are successful. And slowly, they begin creating a life that feels more stable emotionally, not just financially. That is when money stops feeling like constant survival and starts feeling like something that can actually support the life they want to build. One of the most dangerous financial traps is believing that earning more money will automatically solve emotional spending habits. There is also a common belief that earning more money will automatically make life feel stable and emotionally lighter. But many people eventually discover that financial pressure can still exist even after income increases. Because if emotional habits stay the same, the stress often follows people into every new income level. That realization can feel discouraging at first. Someone works hard for years expecting life to finally feel lighter financially, only to realize the anxiety still exists. The spending still happens, the comparison still happens, and the pressure to constantly upgrade life still exists. But this is usually the moment where the deeper realization happens. Financial stability is not only built through earning more. It is built through learning how to slow down enough to make intentional decisions instead of emotional reactions. That shift changes everything. Because once people stop chasing the appearance of success and start prioritizing peace, their decisions begin changing naturally. They become less reactive, less impulsive, and less emotionally controlled by comparison. And over time, that creates something many adults actually want more than luxury. What people are really searching for is breathing room, along with the ability to pay bills without panic, handle unexpected expenses without fear, and enjoy life without constantly feeling financially overwhelmed. That kind of peace is often built much more quietly than people expect. Financial improvement can start feeling overwhelming because changing money habits often feels bigger and more complicated than it actually is. That assumption creates tension before people even begin. People start imagining complicated budgets, extreme restrictions, or unrealistic financial routines they know they probably will not maintain. And because the process feels overwhelming, many people avoid starting entirely. But lasting financial change usually happens through smaller decisions repeated consistently over time. That realization should feel relieving instead of discouraging, because it means financial improvement can start happening in manageable steps. It does not require becoming perfect overnight. They simply need to become more aware and more intentional. One practical step is creating small pauses before emotional spending. Waiting 24 hours before impulse purchases gives emotions enough time to settle, so decisions become more intentional. That single pause can reveal a lot emotionally, because sometimes people realize they were not actually buying something because they needed it. They were buying it because they felt stressed, emotionally drained, bored, lonely, or mentally overwhelmed. And recognizing that emotional pattern is powerful. Another important habit is creating regular financial check-ins. Even spending 15 minutes a week reviewing finances calmly can reduce the anxiety that comes from avoidance. Financial stress often grows stronger in uncertainty, and many avoid looking at their finances because they assume clarity will make them feel worse, even though the opposite is often true. Clarity reduces emotional chaos. It also helps to focus less on looking successful and more on creating stability privately. Many people stay trapped financially because they are constantly trying to keep up with lifestyles that were never truly aligned with their priorities. Sometimes money is spent maintaining an image or lifestyle that quietly creates even more emotional exhaustion. Real financial peace often looks much simpler than people expect, because it usually looks like breathing room, reduced stress, having options, and no longer feeling emotionally controlled by every paycheck. And finally, people need to stop underestimating the power of small habits. Most financial stress is built slowly, but financial stability is built the same way, through quieter and more intentional decisions repeated consistently over time. Those small shifts may not look dramatic immediately, but over time, they completely change the direction of a person's life. Financial progress stops feeling impossible and starts feeling achievable again. Imagine yourself 5 years from now, not wildly rich overnight or living some unrealistic fantasy lifestyle, but simply feeling calmer. You feel less anxious every time you check your bank account, less stressed by unexpected expenses, and less emotionally reactive with money. You open your finances without fear, make decisions intentionally, and finally feel like your money supports your life instead of constantly controlling it. Now imagine the opposite. 5 more years of avoidance, impulse spending, constant comparison, lifestyle pressure, and financial anxiety quietly following you everywhere. The difficult truth is that your future is often shaped by small, repeated behaviors that feel insignificant today. Tiny habits create long-term direction, and the life you experience later is usually built through the choices you repeat quietly now.